He wasn't supposed to be here. Ranked 66th in the world, unknown to most tennis fans, Gustavo Kuerten walked into Roland Garros in 1997 as a nobody. He was just another name in the draw, expected to vanish in the first or second round without leaving a trace. 2 weeks later, he walked out as the French Open champion, holding the trophy high as tears streamed down his face and a smile spread wider than Paris itself. The way he did it shocked the tennis world. The way he changed the sport would last forever. He would rise to the very top, win hearts across the globe, and inspire a revolution in the way tennis was played. But the same story would also lead him into heartbreak, cut short by a battle no champion could win, not against another man, but against his own body. And stay with us, because what Kuerten did during his final farewell in Paris will shock you, and it is a moment that every tennis fan should witness at least once. The unknown champion. When Kuerten stepped onto the clay in Paris in 1997, few believed he belonged. He had never won a professional title. Even within the locker rooms, his name didn't carry weight. Reporters hardly asked him questions. Fans barely knew his face. At best, he was a promising player from Brazil, a country known for its football legends, not its tennis stars. Yet match after match, Kuerten stunned the world. His game had a fearless quality. His forehand exploded with heavy topspin, his backhand flowed like a brushstroke from an artist's hand, and his movement on clay was natural and fluid. He played with a smile, laughing and joking between points, even as he faced champions. One by one, giants fell to the unseeded newcomer. Thomas Muster, the king of clay, was dismissed. Andre Medvedev, another clay warrior, couldn't withstand the Brazilian's relentless energy. By the time Kuerten reached the semifinals, the crowds in Paris had fallen in love with him. They cheered his every shot, drawn to the joy that radiated from him as he played. Then came the final, where he faced Sergi Bruguera, a two-time French Open champion. On paper, it wasn't even a contest. Bruguera's experience and clay mastery should have overwhelmed him, but Kuerten played as if destiny itself was guiding his racket. He dominated the match, winning in straight sets, and when the final ball was struck, Roland Garros had a new champion, one nobody had seen coming, the secret weapon. As the celebrations erupted, analysts scrambled to explain what had happened. Kuerten was good, there was no denying that, but good enough to dismantle champions on their favorite surface? The answer was hiding inside his tennis bag. It wasn't a new racket or a magical grip, it was the strings. Kuerten was one of the very first players to use Luxilon Big Banger polyester strings, made by a small Belgian company that once produced sewing thread and medical sutures. At first glance, these strings were strange, stiff, even painful for casual players to use, but for professionals, they held a secret. They created spin like nothing else before. Polyester strings allowed players to swing harder and faster, generating vicious topspin while still keeping the ball inside the lines. The strings snapped back into place on contact, producing a biting dip that forced the ball down at the last second. For Kuerten on clay, it was a revolution. His shots dipped, kicked, and twisted off the surface in ways his opponents couldn't control. What looked destined to fly long suddenly dropped onto the baseline. What looked manageable became impossible to defend. Kuerten's victory wasn't just about talent, it was about innovation. Those strings would go on to change the very DNA of tennis. The golden smile. If the strings made him dangerous, it was Kuerten himself who made him unforgettable. Fans around the world fell in love with him because he was different. While many champions carried themselves with seriousness and calculation, Kuerten radiated joy. He laughed between points, chatted with ball kids, and celebrated victories by drawing hearts in the clay. He wasn't just winning, he was sharing his happiness with the crowd. His curly hair, easygoing charm, and constant smile earned him a place in the hearts of millions. But beneath the charm was a true champion. After 1997, Kuerten proved he wasn't a one-hit wonder. He won 2 more French Open titles in 2000 and 2001, cementing his place as a clay court king. In 2000, he produced one of the finest weeks of his career at the Tennis Masters Cup in Lisbon. Indoors, far from the clay courts he loved, Kuerten beat Pete Sampras in the semifinal and Andre Agassi in the final. The shots he played were so daring, so heavy with spin, that commentators dubbed it the Luxilon show. Even Sampras admitted he had never faced anything like it. By the end of the season, Kuerten was the world #1, the first South American to finish the year at the top of tennis. For Brazil, his rise was monumental. A nation that had lived and breathed football suddenly had a tennis champion to celebrate. Kids across the country picked up rackets. Crowds packed courts. Kuerten wasn't just a star, he was a national hero, proof that joy and humility could stand on the same stage as power and dominance. The beginning of the end. But here's the question. What happens when the man who revolutionized tennis faces an opponent he cannot beat? For Kuerten, that opponent wasn't Federer, Sampras, or Agassi. It was his own body. Even as he celebrated his victories, his hips were crumbling. The same explosive slides and twisting rallies that made him brilliant were tearing his joints apart. At first it was pain, then came surgeries. Each time he tried to return, the pain dragged him back down. By the early 2000s, Kuerten was caught in a cycle of hope and heartbreak, recovering, returning, breaking down again. His rankings slipped. Matches that once seemed effortless became exhausting battles. The smile stayed, but behind it was struggle. Fans who had once cheered his triumphs now mourned his decline. It wasn't fair. It wasn't how his story was supposed to go. The revolution he sparked, yet even as Kuerten's career faltered, the revolution he began was unstoppable. The polyester strings he pioneered spread across the tennis world like wildfire. By the early 2000s, more than 70% of the ATP's top 100 players were using them, and more than half of the top WTA players as well. Andre Agassi, in his autobiography Open, called them miracle strings, saying they turned average players into greats and greats into legends. The effect on tennis was profound. Baseline rallies grew longer, more physical, more punishing. The forehand evolved into the violent, upward strike that defines the modern game. Serve and volley, once the foundation of champions like Becker, Edberg, and Sampras, began to vanish. Courts slowed, balls grew heavier, and the strings ensured that attacking the net was no longer the dominant tactic. Even Roger Federer adjusted his game, evolving into an all-court baseliner. By the mid-2000s, the era of pure serve and volley was gone. Kuerten hadn't just won trophies, he had reshaped tennis itself. The farewell in Paris. By 2008, the battle was over. After years of surgeries, setbacks, and pain, Kuerten announced he would retire. And fittingly, he chose Roland Garros, the court that had given him everything, as the place for his final goodbye. Fans filled the stands, not expecting victory, but to honor a man who had given them joy. Every shot was cheered. Every rally was a celebration. The result didn't matter. What mattered was the moment. And then came the farewell that shocked everyone. After his final match, Kuerten removed his top layer and revealed the very same shirt he had worn back in 1997 when he won his first French Open. Faded, stretched, almost falling apart, but symbolic of the journey that had come full circle. The crowd erupted. They rose to their feet, chanting his name. Many wept openly, and with one last gesture, Kuerten bent down, drew a heart in the clay, and waved goodbye. It wasn't a farewell, it was a love letter, both to the fans and to the sport that had given him everything, the legacy of Guga. Gustavo Kuerten's career was shorter than it should have been. His body betrayed him too soon. But what he left behind is greater than numbers or records. He won 3 French Opens. He reached world #1. But his real legacy lies in the revolution he sparked and the joy he spread. He changed how tennis is played. He introduced a new era with polyester strings. He inspired millions with his smile and humility. He made tennis feel alive, human, and connected. And off the court, he carried that spirit into his foundation, the Instituto Guga Kuerten, helping children with disabilities in Brazil, proving that his kindness extended far beyond stadiums. Conclusion: the rise and fall of Gustavo Kuerten is not just a tennis story. It is the story of joy, of innovation, of heartbreak, and of legacy. From a nobody ranked 66th in the world to a 3-time French Open champion. From a smiling boy in Paris to a man who fought through pain until he could fight no more. From a player who shocked the world to a pioneer who changed it forever. And through it all, he never stopped smiling. So now the question is yours: what matters more, the number of trophies a player wins, or the way they change the sport for generations to come? For many, the answer is simple. Gustavo Kuerten may not have the endless titles of Federer, Nadal, or Djokovic, but his story, his joy, and his legacy ensure his place among the greatest. If you believe Guga's story deserves to be remembered, like this video, share it with others, and tell us your favorite Kuerten moment in the comments. Because sometimes greatness isn't about how long you stay at the top. It's about how deeply you touch the game on your way there.